All right, there we go. Hello everyone, how's it going? Team here, and this is BxJS Weekly episode 106, bringing you all the best JavaScript news in the podcast form. And honestly, I'm surprised that we're gonna have an episode that is this small in this time, basically. I expected that, because we have this COVID-19 situation and everything, that people would, sit at home and be more productive and do something useful and, I don't know, release more libraries, articles, whatever. But seems like it's exact opposite of that. And we have like 2.5 libraries and then a few articles, and that's basically it. So this one is going to be a bit short. Hey, Lucas, welcome to the stream. All right, so as usual, the first section of the day is getting started. We got 4 articles here. The first one we have is Intrinsic Sizing in CSS. So this talks about the intrinsic sizing of the elements using CSS. The intrinsic means that you define the size of the element is defined by the content the element has. And this is something I honestly did not know the CSS has before reading that. Again, I'm not exactly the CSS guy, so I'm not working too much with it. And when I do, I prefer stuff like Tailwind that basically does it for me. But it's really good to know that this exists, and the article does a very good job of explaining how the intrinsic sizing works and how to basically pick the correct CSS properties for that and so on and so forth. So if you are learning CSS, or maybe you never heard about intrinsic sizing, make sure to read through this. It's really, really good. Hey, why do you have to pick usernames like this? Julian? Is that how you read that? Welcome to the stream. God damn it. Okay, I probably murdered your username, but there we go. Anyway, continuing, the next article we got here is creating your first REST API with Deno and Postgres. So this is possibly, I think we didn't have that many articles on Deno side, but yeah, so this is one of them, and it shows you how to build a basic REST API using Postgres and Deno.js with specific Deno libraries. So yeah, it's it's very straightforward. There's nothing super complex here, and it's quite simple to follow. So if you wanted to dive into Deno and wanted to build a simple REST API that talks to a database, then this is probably a very good starting point. Let me have a look in the chat. It's Diego. Okay, Diego is a lot easier. Hey, my tennis, welcome to the stream. Hey, Olsi, welcome to the stream. All right. Yes, Diego is definitely a lot easier than whatever it is right now. Anyway, continuing, we got another interactive tutorial that is published on Observable HQ that is called Introduction to AntV, and this is another one about the data visualization. I think most of those from Observable HQ talk either about data processing or data visualization most of the time. So again, this one talks about AntV, and it shows you how to do different fancy charts with it. And again, this is Observable HQ, so that means you can literally just play around with the values here and see the data change immediately, right? So once you re-render that, you will see the changes, which is, again, probably one of my favorite things about the Observable HQ, the fact that you can just learn by tweaking stuff, which is kind of awesome. And yeah, the fact that you can do that as well, it's just like, this stuff still blows my mind to this day. So if you are into data visualization, and if you never heard about AntV, or maybe heard about it but wanted to learn it, then there you go. This is a really good tutorial, and the AntV is obviously on GitHub, so if you want to start it, you can do that. Right, last article we got here in Getting Started section, and let me just allow that real quick, is implementing infinite scroll and image lazy loading in React. So it's a pretty basic tutorial on doing infinite scroll and lazy loading using intersection observer in React.js environments with, basic hooks and stuff like this. Nothing super complex, but if you wondered, if you're just getting started with React, and if you're wondering how exactly do you, do the lazy loading or do the infinite scroll, which is, in my opinion, a terrible pattern for like 99% of cases, and pagination usually works better because it's dereferenceable most of all, then do check this one out. It actually does a really good job of introducing what is intersection observer, how to use it for lazy loading, and how to use it for infinite loading, which is, again, quite straightforward, but it's a really good getting started article. Right, that's it for getting started. Like 4 articles, that's all we had this week. Now we got 2 news articles, which are, again, not super complicated, but pretty neat. Anyways, so the first one we got is React single file components are here. This is an article from Swix, who's, mostly has like this sort of, they're not really technical pieces, but they're more diving into the whole like architecture and patterns and design of the, code design, systems design and stuff like this. And this one talks about the Redwood.js, which I covered last podcast. So this is this new React-based framework that's kind of all in one. And what they did with the component files, which is kind of neat. So if you look at the existing GraphQL queries, right? The typical structure of the component, if you look at Apollo, for example, looks like this. You have the query that is the GraphQL query that sends the request for data, and then you have the hook that uses that query, and then you have 4 states. You either have an error state that shows you an error, you have a loading state that shows you a loading indicator, there is no data, you show something, and there's the data, you show, well, you render the data, right? So there's like 4 states at most, sometimes 3 if you don't care if there's any data, but that's a different case. So what the Redwood did is they introduced so-called Redwood cells, which basically is single file that exports 4 things. It exports the query, it exports loading component, empty, failure, and success components, right? As easy as that. I think it's a really, so like Swix argues for the same thing. It's a really elegant pattern that makes it incredibly easy to structure sort of single file components that are centralized, I guess. Instead of like putting this loading and empty and failure into different components, you just put it into one, and then you can work with it in one simple file. And I think it's a really cool solution. And there's like a lot more argumentation here in the article itself about why the formats is better than function, what is the story component stories, and how to merge CSF and SFCs. There's a lot more discussion basically going on. Again, some suggestions with top level components hooks, which sounds interesting, to be honest, but I don't know if that will, like, how that will work and if that will work at all. So you would need to have some sort of a custom loader. But there's some really interesting thoughts here, and yeah, so it's a pretty neat pattern, and I will be curious to see how that develops, because it seems like community in general likes that. And there was even input from Dan Abramov on something that they basically worked on within React that is kind of relevant to that, which is also quite curious. So if you are interested in this kind of stuff, do definitely read through article. It's actually really good and quite entertaining as well. So there we go. Have a look at the chat. Lucas, I use Intersection Observer to lazy load iframes. I mean, Intersection Observer is great. There's like so many uses for it, and it's really easy to use even within React. Like, it's literally just one callback and you're good. You can use it for nav patterns, for lazy loading, for infinite loading, whatever the hell you want, right? So it's kind of quite awesome API, and I'm really happy we have that instead of, scroll hijacking and all the other bullshit that basically messes with your navigation. Anyway, the last article we got here for today is React Suspense in practice. So this is a really, really big write-up on using React Suspense for lazy loading the components and, showing the fallbacks and all that kind of stuff. I guess if you already know how the Suspense works, you won't really find anything new here. I mean, they do like show the example of re-implementing navigation using component lazy loading is what I want to say, and stuff like this. But the gist is quite straightforward, just to demonstrate how the Suspense works, how the fallbacks work, how do you lazy load something, how do you switch the components, and so on and so forth. So if you know how Suspense works, you won't really find anything new here. But if you never use Suspense, or maybe you wanted to dive into it but wasn't sure, then this is a really good starting point, along with the official docs, obviously, which are always of a pretty high quality. But yeah, so if you wanted to learn about React Suspense, this is probably a really good place to start. Right, that's actually it for articles and news. We got 3 tips, tricks, and bit-sized awesomeness here. I guess mostly bit-sized awesomeness, because none of those are really tips or tricks, and I'm not sure that all of that is awesome, but 2 of them are. So the first one is the announcement from NPM. They were just acquired by GitHub, which means they are now part of GitHub, which means you can stop worrying about coronavirus destroying NPM and, they are going out of business or whatever. They're not going to live under GitHub umbrella, which means they're going to be funded by Microsoft, basically, and the registry is essentially safe. And I think, in my opinion, that's really good news. So we've seen Microsoft doing a lot of cool stuff with open source, and hopefully they will continue doing that and pushing NPM towards being a better package registry. So there we go. That's, in my opinion, really good news. And the second announcement we got here is GitHub Mobile is officially leaving beta and entering general availability starting, well, it says today, but it actually was on March 17th, which means you can already download it and use it. And it actually worked quite fine. So it's a really nice app. And if you're using mobile, and do make sure to check it out. It's actually quite nice. Let me have a look at the chat. What will happen with Yarn if NPM is under Microsoft now? I mean, Yarn is developed by Facebook, right? So unless anything changed, I know that majority of contributors is from Facebook, but it's sort of community project. So I guess it doesn't really change anything, and I don't think it's going to change anything at all. The BxJS website not updated anymore. It is, wait, what? 100. So you might have problems with cache. Try to force reload this because it's statics and I probably misconfigured my caching headers. So try to force reload. It has 105 and 106 should be built over tonight. But yeah, it tends to have this caching issue. So if you want to send a PR to fix that, I will be more than happy to accept that. But it should be updated. It has the weekly builds that happen on midnight on Sunday, whenever that is in a GitHub timing. So there you go. Okay, last bit of bit-sized not so awesome news we got here is the fact that Electron is temporarily pausing major updates. That goes along with the announcement from Chromium team that also pauses the major updates because they are everyone's switching to remote work. And the teams are now sort of, not all people are used basically to working remote, which honestly on teams like Chrome was surprising to me. But I guess, the big company like Google, not everyone is working remotely. So it's going to be hard for people who are not used to that to switch. So they are going to be changing the schedule. There's not going to be, no longer going to be what they had before. It's going to be slightly slower, I guess, maybe completely paused for the duration of the pandemic. And the Electron did the same decision essentially because they are on par with Chromium. They won't really have anything to release anymore. So they're going to be pausing the major releases as well. Okay. That's basically it for the tips, tricks, and bit-sized awesomeness. We got 2 releases this week. It's like NestJS version 7, which actually has a ton of cool things in here. So it's like the GraphQL with TypeScript support and GraphQL plugin and a bunch of other cool things that they've introduced. I've seen Nest more than once. I don't really like, how very object-oriented it is. Let's just put it this way. I prefer a more functional approach, but it looks like a very nice framework. So if you're using it, make sure to check it out. Or maybe if you like object-oriented programming more than functional, do check this one out because it seems like a very nicely designed one. That's all I have to say about that. And the second release we got here is Babel version 7.9. The major highlight here being the Babel preset env now has the bug fixes option that is going to be enabled by default in Babel version 8, but for now we have to flip it manually, which makes the the resulting builds a lot smaller and a lot nicer and account for a lot of things that modern browsers can basically do. So if you are using Babel to build your stuff, and if you wanted to have smaller builds while you're targeting the modern browsers, make sure to check this one out and try it out with the bug fixes true and, see if anything breaks for you actually. Because theoretically it shouldn't, but, it might be some unexpected things. But yes, so module, no module pattern support and everything, which is kind of awesome. Okay, that's it for releases, really. It's like we're almost done here. This is terrifyingly tiny. Now we got libs and demos, and the first one we got here is really fast deep clone rfdc that, allows you to deep clone the objects in JavaScript in a really, really fast way. That's like supposed to be the fastest one out there, which is, the benchmarks are bonkers as usual. So if you are looking for a lib that does cloning really fast, do check this one out. Next thing we got here is myDrive. This is a Google Drive clone using Node.js and MongoDB. So you can self-host that. You can learn how to build something like this if you want to. Seems to be a pretty nice project. Yeah, there's plenty of stars here, and seems like it's quite actively supported. And there's a demo on Heroku if you are interested. Okay, next thing we got here is heapify, the fastest JavaScript priority queue out there with 0 dependencies. So if you're looking for queue, right, the priority queues, and you wanted something small and really fast, then this one is actually a nice pick. And it also has the ES module if you want to use it. So yeah, looks quite nice basically. All right, next thing we got here is useWorker hook, running heavy tasks in the background without blocking the UI. Essentially just a hook for using the offloading the tasks to the web workers in a nice manner instead of, you know, doing it manually basically. As probably wraps around something like the developer, what was the name of the package? Let me guess. Does it wraps around the, no, it doesn't. Interesting. Okay, it actually doesn't have any dependencies. Oh, wow. Okay, so it's, I guess, custom logic. That's pretty neat. But anyway, there you go. So if you wanted to offload something using hooks, you can now do it with this one, which looks pretty nice. All right. Next thing we got here is joy.js, make happy little programs. Now, this thing is a bit weird, I guess. Yeah, it sort of allows you to build this interactive kind of experiences that generate stuff. And not just like in this case, you can see on the screen, there's the rendering of the, I guess, the generated art, you would call that. It's like a render of a flower with steps. You can also use it to generate music. You can also use it for non-linear dynamics and stuff like this. But yeah, it seems to be pretty crazy. I honestly have no idea why would I use that. I mean, I guess it's cool that it has all these elements that allow you to, you know, just play around with it interactively. Probably good for designing like learning experiences, but yeah, it's, you know, just have a look at it. It looks really neat, but I honestly don't know why would I personally use that. I guess I'm out of the target audience here. Comlink. The Comlink was one of them, but I think, yes, of course I have to add JS first. There was the Comlink, and there was a bunch of others, right? So there was the develop it on GitHub, and he, whoa. So he had 2 packages that were working with web workers, Workerize, and there was something else from him. So the Workerize was the one that is relatively easy to use with like the inline syntax, and there was something else. Oh yeah, Workers, yeah, the loader for, and that was, what was it? Maybe it was a Comlink, but yeah, whatever. So it's like there's a bunch of them already. So I thought you used something underneath, but actually custom logic, which I guess, you know, is not that hard to implement. But anyway. Right, continuing, we got rxjs-for-await, a new library for making rxjs support async await for await loops via async iterables. So essentially what that allows you to is to consume observable using for await value of your observable loop, right? Which is actually, like, it makes perfect sense that you can do that, but obviously you need to implement the async iterable for that to work, which this library just wraps rxjs and does that for you, which is kind of neat. So if you have any cases where you need to consume observable in this kind of sequential manner, I guess, this is probably a really good way to do that. I mean, not that, you know, you couldn't do that with subscriptions and stuff, which work just fine, but this one is, I guess, could be nice in some cases. But anyway, if you work with rxjs, do make sure to check it out. It seems like a very neat way to do it. Okay, next thing we got here is tailwind-starter-kit, a beautiful extensions for Tailwind CSS. So this is like a bunch of Tailwind components that are purely CSS. You can just copy them and use them whenever you want. Stuff like alerts, buttons, images, menus, labels, whatever you can imagine. The cool thing, it also comes with Vue.js, React.js, Angular, and JavaScript components, which you can basically, again, just, you know, if you write in React, you can just go here, copy this component, and then use it in your code with an example over here, which works pretty cool. The alerts come along with the close button prepared for you. So if you're working with Tailwind, do check this one out. If you are not working with Tailwind, I would highly recommend checking it out because Tailwind is pretty damn awesome. All right, and the last library we got here today is gqless. This is probably my favorite one from this week because it's a really cool idea. It's a GraphQL client that works without writing queries. So the gist here is that it takes your properties that you get from the query object that it exposes and automatically maps them into a GraphQL query, which seems to work really well and actually seems like a really cool idea. So instead of writing the query that would say, okay, get me a me with name, get me users 10 with limit 10 and ID name, you would just say, okay, query.me.name, like you would access it. Then you would say query.users with limit 10, map user to user ID, user name. And then everything else, the query will be generated by the library itself. That sounds like a really awesome way of doing it, to be honest. So if you're working with GraphQL and if you're doing a lot of these queries that purely just read and don't have to persist state across different things and manipulate things in tricky manners, do check this one out. It actually looks really awesome. It also supports mutations, if I remember correctly, and there's like variables, polling, custom queries, interfaces, and unions. Does it support mutations? I think I've seen it somewhere, but maybe I'm mistaken and mixing things up. It might be that it is just the read query for now. Yeah, it seems like it's just the read queries for now. But anyway, that's a really nice way of reading queries from GraphQL APIs. So if you are working with that, do check this one out. It's actually a really, really cool idea. I probably should also start it on GitHub because I really like that approach. There we go. Right. That's actually it from my side. That was like 20 minutes of stream. That I don't have anything else this week. This was it. So, just want to stay safe, stay home, and wash your hands, I guess. So if you guys have any more questions, suggestions, or things you want to share, throw them into the chat right now. If not, then I guess we can just wrap it up here. Again, you can find all the mentioned links on the GitHub right now or on bxjs.dev once the website updates in a few hours, I guess, like 10 hours or something. Midnight, basically GitHub time. You can join our Discord server to chat with us about JavaScript, video games, or whatever. You can follow me on Twitter for updates and rants and shit posting, of course. And yeah, that's basically it. Have you used AWS CDK? What is that? That is something I haven't even heard about. Cloud Development Kit. I've used their command line and I've used the Terraform recently to like scaffold the AWS Amazon Web Services infrastructure, but this is something that I haven't even heard about yet. I mean, Amazon Web Services has an incredible amount of services that they provide, and I think it's impossible to know about all of them, but that is. So what is this? What is Amazon Web Services Cloud Development Kit? CloudFormation enables you create provision. Oh, okay, so it's a CloudFormation basically. Define custom resources. Yeah, okay. So here's the thing. This basically logs you into the Amazon Web Services and forces you to. So once you write this, you are not going to be going anywhere from Amazon, right? Which I guess works fine if you know that you're logged into them anyway. But I personally prefer more generic solutions. So Terraform is what I've picked from all the tools, and it's not that hard to write. Like it took me like half a day to learn the syntax and then finish the basic infrastructure that consists of like a bunch of EC2 instances and then some stuff like, the running scripts on them to set up MongoDB setup, Redis, whatever. So I don't know. I guess it looks fine, but I personally don't know why would I pick that over Terraform that I could easily port to run on, I don't know, Google Cloud or Azure or whatever if I wanted to, right? So I wonder if someone would make a generic version of that would basically be acting the same as Terraform but using JavaScript. That would be interesting to see. But yeah, I mean, I would still stick to Terraform rather than that. And rather than CloudFormation again, because it's purely Amazon Web Services. But yeah, it looks pretty neat. So we'll give it that. But yeah. Okay, any more questions, suggestions, or other things you guys want to talk about? Yeah, this was too damn short. It's like 20 minutes or something. David Walsh, a name cancel fetch. I think I've seen this one, but it's like super short, and we already had like 5 or 10 articles about this about the board controller and how you do that. It's like, yes, you can create a board controller, you can get a signal from it, pass it to fetch, and then you can abort it if you want to. Cool, yeah, you have exactly the same information in MDN basically, but I guess it's a nice bit of tutorial. But we had that, like, wait a second. If I go to BxJS dev and say fetch abort, how many results are we gonna get? Abort control. I remember we definitely had more than one of those. No. Micro frontends. Abort. Abort. There you go. Just 5 episodes ago. So okay. We definitely had something similar. So, you know, I decided to just ignore that for now, at least. Okay, any more questions, suggestions, or anything else? I mean, you know, if you have any non-related questions, whatever, just ask away, because I don't really have anything better to do anyway. I mean, I could go and play Doom, because the stream unfortunately didn't really work last time, but the game itself is awesome, and I definitely want to play more of that. So unless you guys have any more things you want to ask or chat about, I'm just gonna go and play some Doom Eternal, because it's quite damn awesome. Right. Doesn't seem like we have any more questions or suggestions, so that was really short, but yeah, there's nothing really else to discuss. I guess let's just wrap it up here. Again, thank you guys very much for watching. Thank you for your continued support. Hope you found something useful today as well. As I said, stay safe, stay home, wash your hands, and, you know, be healthy. That's very important. Vitenis, I actually opened the chat on my left screen so that I can see the YouTube chat as well. And yes, it doesn't sync half of the messages for some reason, but I can see all your messages now, so that's perfectly fine. That works fine now. Unfortunately, I couldn't find anything but Restream chat that basically does this kind of, you know, unified chat from all the services. So we're going to stick with that. I'm wondering if I should just kill the chat from the screen at all and just read it, you know, from off screen, because it seems to be working better. Anyway, we're going to figure it out. So I can see your messages. I know that you hate the chat sync. I can see them immediately now. Don't worry about that. Anyway, again, thank you guys for watching. Stay safe, stay healthy, and enjoy the rest of your weekend and quarantine and isolation. You need to build your own. Oh, no. I mean, we could probably do that. Would be a nice project, actually. You know what's interesting right now? The Restream chat got the message faster than the YouTube chat on my other tab, which is makes me wonder if there's something wrong with the YouTube API maybe now due to overloading. How's the situation with the COVID-19 in your city? I think we have like about 100 sick people, and they've like closed all the non-essential shops. But it's not too terrible now. Like, I usually use this this sort of there we go. There's this really nice visualization dashboard from the Robert Koch Institute here, and we can choose the Sachsen here, and there's the Leipzig, and if we pick the city, so yeah, you see, it's like it's not too terrible, but it definitely is growing. So yeah, we're gonna see. I mean, I think we're lagging behind because we're a relatively small city that is, you know, not something like Berlin or Munich or whatever that have a lot of travelers here. So we have a big airport, but it's mostly like cargo one. So it's probably gonna either hit us with a delay or we're gonna be fine. I'm hoping here, like fingers crossed. But so far it's not too terrible. But the toilet paper and pasta is missing from the shelves in the shops. This is like the silliest thing ever. For some reason, it's toilet paper and then pasta and pasta sauce. So I'm not sure why exactly pasta and pasta sauce, because everything else like vegetables and bread and cheese and whatever you can imagine, fish, meat. Okay, no, meat is missing as well in some cases. But yeah, the most empty shelves are basically like pasta sauces, and then toilet paper. Like, why? I don't know. Don't ask me. But yeah, so far, not too terrible. I'm hoping the response will be, there's basically rumors that the Germany is gonna issue like a countrywide lockdown and quarantine starting next week or something, and then we have one of the most like advanced university clinics here. There's like the Uniklinicum. They teach doctors and stuff, so their equipment should be pretty good in our town, which means that we're probably gonna be fine. But we're gonna see how that develops. Anyway, I'm looking at this optimistically. Shouldn't be too bad. I have some faith in Germans doing this correctly, but yeah, so far doing fine. Okay. Any more questions, suggestions, or shall we just wrap it up here? Okay, I'll take that as a no. So once again, thank you guys very much for your continued support. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the show. Stay safe, stay home, wash your hands, and I see you next week for some development stream. I actually got an invite for, what was it, Warp.js, I think. So we might stream that and see how that works. So it's a serverless function as a service for next generation. We're gonna see what is this and how it works, because it looks quite interesting. Oh yeah, there we go. So thank you guys very much for watching, and I see you next time.